Thank you all for joining us today. I see some folks are still getting logged on, so we'll just start with a welcome message and an intro. This is our first webinar from the Securities Division, and we want to say thank you to everyone who's joining us live. This webinar is being recorded, so also welcome to you if you're joining us after the fact. Today's topic, which centers on succession planning, was identified based on discussions following our Investment Advisor Symposium last fall. We aim to have a couple more of these webinars throughout the year this year. But thank you for coming to our first one. We have invited Lisa Roth to join us today. Lisa has 3 decades of experience in leadership and entrepreneurial issues. As president of Monahan and Roth LLC, which is a professional consulting firm, she offers compliance guidance to brokerage firms, investment advisors, and related investment industry professionals and firms. Lisa holds a FINRA Series 7, 24, 53, 4, 65, and 99. Before I turn it over to Lisa, you'll see a couple of the topics that we're going to cover today, right? We'll talk about your regulatory requirements around a succession plan, the business requirements, some recommendations, and then we'll also have a chance for Q&A. But we want to let you know, although there's a chance at the end, you can ask questions throughout as we go. Please just use the Q&A feature. It'll be up at the top. There's a little box you can click on, then you can enter into your questions. The questions are being monitored by Laura and Blair, who I think most of you know, our outreach coordinators. So if you hear a faceless voice come on, that's probably one of them. They'll be prompting us that there's been a question, and then we'll be sure to get them answered timely. So why succession planning? According to the 2020 census, almost 20% of Montana's population is over the age of 65, meaning your clients, as well as you as their financial advisors, are entering what we call kind of a graying or senior area of their life. Age aside, however, just as you help your own clients plan for their futures, both the expected and unexpected things that might come, you also need to plan ahead for your business and its future and what may come, including both planned and unplanned. The rule itself you see on your screen there is Administrative Rule 6.10-5, not dash, 6.10.510, subsection 6. This is a NASA model rule. It was adopted in 2020 in Montana. It directly tracks the model rule. There's no significant changes with regard to our rule. And this is an exam priority for our office going forward. We consistently see inadequate plans when we come to do an exam with our state-based investment advisor. So it's something we wanted to provide more information about what it is that we are looking for. I mean, I think you will agree at the end of this presentation, if you don't already, that a well-structured plan really does ensure not only just your business continuity, but it protects your client relationships and it helps to maximize the value of your practices. So we're glad that you could join us today. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lisa. As I said, if there are questions as we go, please just use the Q&A feature, and Laura or Blair will prompt us and let us know that there is one. Thanks for coming, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. Thanks for inviting me, and welcome to everyone who's joining us either live or after the fact. This is obviously an important topic. It's important to your regulators, important enough that you have a rule. Kirsten mentioned NASA. I don't know how many of you know which NASA that is. It's not the space NASA, but the North American Securities Administrators Association, NASA.org. has some great information actually about business continuity and succession planning, and the fact that Montana adopted the model rule that was published by NASA is meaningful. It gives you continuity, and if nothing else, you can understand that you're standing in line with other states and other advisors all across the country. So that's really important background, and it's obvious that Montana cares about succession planning, hence kicking off the webinar series with this topic. It is definitely an important topic, and importantly, it's an easy one to test for. So Kirsten mentioned the exam results, and as one of the exam priorities, focusing on succession planning, because it's really easy to test whether or not you have an adequate plan. There are certain components of that plan that are really important. So let's talk about that in plain English. On your screen are some of the components of Montana's rule, along with the NASA guidance for plans in plain English. So let's just talk through some of these scenarios. You know, really importantly, the rule in Montana and consistent across the country for investment advisors is a books and records rule. It's about controlling your documents and information. It's a really important topic nationwide. It's a really important topic to your clients. I read a statistic that 1 in 5 individuals has been somehow victimized because of unauthorized access to their non-public information. And of those, 73% had suffered some financial inconvenience or loss as a result. So your clients care too about who's got the keys, who's got the passwords, whether your records are kept in paper and files or in a desk, whether they are on the cloud somewhere in your CRM or a document archive. It's really important to have control of those documents. And so in thinking about succession planning and remembering that business continuity and records and succession planning are all overlapping topics in the context of succession planning, it's important to know who has the keys and to have a backup for those keys. And when I talk about keys, again, I'm talking about passwords and access to information about your customers and about your business. For many of us who have a single person business, my whole company is here for the presentation today. Many of you may be in that same position. It's important to have somebody who understands where those documents are. It could be a professional, an attorney, an IT company, it could be a consultant, it could be a family member, it could be a trustee or an accountant. So if you're operating on your own, it's not okay to say that, that they'll figure it out. It's important to have a plan for passing those keys. And now there's no time like the present to test that with some trusted contact or individual. Obviously, it could be a business partner as well. And then the next consideration is who's going to be available and qualified, willing as part of the planning process. But for starters, let's find out who's available and qualified to take over some of those mission critical duties and responsibilities. Those would include business responsibilities like check writing, financial statements, tax reporting and that sort of thing, as well as your regulatory obligations. Who has the licensure, who has the experience to conduct and continue on the advisory services or the planning services that are integral to your business. So, answering these questions in and of themselves is the start of succession planning. And there's no wrong answer. It's important that you begin to contemplate the answer and make a record and proceed. And let's talk about relocation. We'll come back to communications. Let's talk about relocation. Knowing where your office is can be conducted is really important to the process. We had a lot of experience at this recently due to the remote work resulting from the pandemic. So many of us have had an opportunity to experiment with the relocation and remote work. And to whatever extent you did it, I'm guessing that you, as I did, had some obstacles. Something or another came up that required attention. Maybe receipt of the physical mail continued to come to the office, and you couldn't get to the office for whatever reason, or messages, or invoices. Issues like that may have arisen that you had to overcome, and you did overcome them, and you made it through to today. But that, again, is part of your succession planning. Remember those obstacles, write them down, identify how you overcame them, and there you go, part of your plan. As for communications, most of us communicate electronically. Many of us, I should say, communicate using some form of electronic communication, which is relatively easy to continue, provided somebody has the passwords and the access. But it is important that you consider how a temporary interruption. Kirsten mentioned an unanticipated temporary interruption, or a lengthy interruption, possibly a lifelong succession plan, how that's going to impact the communications. And that would be both incoming and outgoing. When the interruption occurs, notifying your customers of the next steps is really important. Again, part of your plan, the process of notification, the individuals responsible for notification, and the content of those notifications is all to be contemplated in the performance in your development of a succession plan. And then finally, I think it's really important to understand what client harm might come from a sudden, unanticipated interruption in your business. It's a good way to build a foundation for a planned succession plan. We'll talk a little bit about the differences in succession plans in a minute, but thinking about how your clients might respond is really important. I actually had an email from a client this morning, just crazy timing. I'll read it to you. This is just one of my clients. Hi, Lisa. As a registered investment advisor firm, what licenses does, I won't say her name, need to transact securities? I just turned 65. I actually just turned 65, but he turned 65. And of course, he's thinking about succession, not planning on fully retiring anytime soon. But I'm starting to get questions from a few clients about what my own retirement plans or succession plan looks like. And that's a lesson for all of us. If they're not asking, they're probably thinking about it, either because they are in a category where they're thinking about what's next, or they're concerned about you for whatever reason. And not concerned in a bad way. Most of your clients are loyal and faithful and want the best for you, but you do have access to their assets and their financial data. And so it's important that you consider what you can do for your clients in the way of shoring up your office and your legacy for their benefit. So I think that's probably enough to satisfy the question about whether or not you actually need a business plan. And we can advance that slide if you want. The answer is yes, your business needs a plan. We're here because Montana requires you to have a plan, but it's really important for your business as well. I love this quote. I don't make a habit of reading slides, but I'm going to read this one. Starting a small business is hard. Everybody on this call knows that, but exiting can be even harder. Early planning is the key. I think that's really, really important. It's really hard to think about what if you're not here. And succession comes in so many different forms. Many of us jump to retirement and age as a primary driver, and that's legitimate. Kirsten shared the Montana census. Overall in the country, the U.S. Census Bureau recorded that approximately 51% of business owners nationwide are over the age of 55. Children, by many of our standards. But indeed, approaching an age where many are going to need to consider exit strategies in the near future. So that's obviously not industry related, but very relevant to us as small business owners. You can have a look at some of these other statistics, which discuss how many of advisors managing less than 50 million, that could be many of us, have a formal plan. 13%. It's a pretty low number compared with a much higher number for our larger firm counterparts. We've got a little catching up to do in that respect. And then the description of the planning process. I love this statistic from the DeVoe survey that more than half of the 118 RIAs that they surveyed anticipated that any transition from the founders to the next generation would be bumpy. I love that description. Bumpy or worse. And many of them saying a severe challenge. I mean, that's very true. The challenges are not insignificant, but there is significant risk. Most of us can understand, and most advisors, 54%, as reported here. I think this was a survey from Edward Jones. 54% see a significant risk to not having a succession plan. And the top reasons, primarily uncertainty. What happens next? So I think it's really important to know that, one, if you don't have a plan, if you're not prepared, you're not alone. There are many others that are in your same position, but you've got to find a way to get over those obstacles, because none of these obstacles is an excuse for you not to meet your own regulators' standards. And that's really, really important. Great incentive, and really important in the context of getting a plan underway. So let's just talk about this succession planning. I mean, obviously, the answer to that first question is it now? Yes, now is the right time. And if you have a plan, great. Now's a good time to consider how you might beef it up. If you don't, you've come to the right place, and it is the right time to start thinking about it. There's really just there's no bad time. And as per that email that I just read, it's important for your clients as well to understand that there are protections regarding your documents, your information, their non-public information, their transition to a new individual or individuals who might be servicing their accounts temporarily or permanently, are individuals that have been willingly taken on this role, who understand the role and may not be perfect on day one, but it's going to be really important for your clients that you've got that plan. And sharing it with your clients is honestly a value add. I have many clients who have their succession plan, and it's reasonably well designed, but they're not ready to share it with their clients. And that could be because of fear that your client assets will erode because they're informed of your succession plan and they don't like it, or that your clients may not understand the timing and may have additional demands for you. For whatever reason, I encourage you to get over those insecurities about sharing the plan with your clients, because in the end, the object of the exercise is to keep your clients in good hands. And that's important, whether your succession is due to an unanticipated interruption or as part of a plan. But it's important that your clients understand that whoever's taking over in your absence is going to appreciate the fact that clients have been prepared for this. They understand generally what's going to happen, and they know where to go for assistance. So if you're thinking about where to start, starting with your clients is probably the number one place for you. And also thinking about what's right for your business. It's really important in succession planning to consider that it's not all about aging, and it's not all about getting hit by a bus or being unable to. That was a really terrible metaphor. Sorry about that. But it's not all about an unanticipated accident or interruption, and it's not all about aging. It's something that your business needs you to do. Part of succession planning and business continuity planning is establishing controls that protect your legacy and that protect your business. And the smaller your business and the fewer people involved in the day-to-day activity of the business, the more critical that assessment becomes. I have a close colleague that I communicate with frequently. His company has actually just done an acquisition of a Montana-based investment advisor It was a larger firm. It was an SEC registrant, but he's familiar with the Montana rule, and so kudos for getting the word out. But one of the things that he's got on his website is a valuation calculator, and I think I mention it because sometimes it's hard to understand what the value of your business is, and in looking for an objective assessment of what your business is actually worth is again a really important part of succession planning. The valuation of your business might determine that you plan to retire, send your clients elsewhere, or you plan to retire and grant, an understudy or a deputy or a business partner the authority over your business, or knowing the valuation of your business might encourage you to consider a sale of your practice or a merger of your practice. Any of these is a good decision if it's the right decision for you, if it feels comfortable for you. But all of those decisions, no matter which direction you're going to go into, all of them, I would say, end up based on the actual legacy that you've built, and valuation is part of that. So thinking about the fact that your business has value is a really important part of succession planning. And then, of course, and maybe that's a good incentive to roll your sleeves up and really contemplate your options. And then, of course, the fact that your business is regulated. It's more than just complying with the rule, and it's more than just, it's certainly more than a check a box exercise. It's really important to consider because of things like licensing. You cannot simply hand over your business to an individual who's not properly qualified. And licensing an individual in the state of Montana requires a regulatory filing, and understanding the inner workings of that filing process is really important. You may have a consultant who offers I don't offer this service, this is not a promotional message, but you may have a consultant or a company that can offer a temporary transition for you with regard to licensing by establishing a bench strength sort of relationship. That's always something that you may want to consider as a backup. But whatever the direction you go in, having somebody lined up who meets your business qualifications and the regulatory qualifications is critical to the success of that plan. All right, so let's just get down to brass tacks and talk a little bit about making the plan itself. It's there's that question again. When it's time, and that time that is now. It is really important to think about this now for all the regulatory reasons we discussed. We start there. What does the regulator require? And your regulator requires something more than a statement in your policy manual. Your regulator is expecting you to have considered many of the topics that we discussed wherever you start. Books and records is a good place to start. Client relationships is a good place to start. Handoff to a qualified person, a good place to start. Any of those and all of those should be a component of what you're doing to comply with the regulators' requirements. Really important. On that NASAA website, nasaa.org, there is information about succession planning and business continuity planning that could be really helpful for you if you're looking for an outline or some structure for that plan. I also encourage you to think about some of the tough questions. It's hard to look in the mirror and get a grip on what it is your company could use, what it is could benefit your company, and starting with a couple of if onlys, and this question is direct. Am I the leader I once was? But to answer that, I think it's important to think about some of the things that you say when you say, if only, if only I had an associate or a trusted partner that had expertise in this area. If only I had a better understanding of how to apply artificial intelligence and whether to apply artificial intelligence and how that might help or hurt my business. If only I had a better grasp on the documents and information that my customers are bringing to me to evaluate. Any of those questions can help you to answer that first question on our slide and try to identify someone who might actually complement your skill set in a leadership role. Another way to look at it are, what are the things that keep you up at night? and filling those slots, those worry slots or those obstacles might help you to understand how you could be the leader that helps the business to continue to thrive, to sustain and possibly grow the business. And so those are really, important and self-serving ways to think about the succession. I mean, what if you could begin now, and in building a succession plan, you could actually enhance the value of your practice, whether that's through hiring, through upward mobility, through discussions with a partner, through merger, starting to think about how those kinds of considerations in succession planning might help your business to grow is time well spent in locking down your legacy. The other thing I wanted to talk about in this context is whether or not you need a professional to mediate the conflicts of interest that naturally arise in creating a succession plan. I had an opportunity to, I didn't consider it mediating at the time. It was part of my consulting relationship with a client, but I had an opportunity to work with a client on building a succession plan. And there were obstacles that were unique to my client. It was a father-son team. The father was the breadwinner in the practice, the asset gatherer, and the primary advisor. The son was recently licensed and coming into the practice with new ideas. And there came a time when they realized that this could be their succession plan. And they approached me about helping to develop what this might look like for their company. And there were issues that arose, the father-son relationship in and of itself. There's a natural momentum and a natural tension in some of those relationships. There were other siblings who recognized that the value of the practice was part of their inheritance and part of the assets, the family assets. There was a spouse in this instance who was contemplating licensing and very much interested in playing a valued role in the development, growth, and evolution of the practice. And all of those issues were taken into account in the development of their succession plan. Another really important facet for them was they had decided to make a proactive announcement to their clients, not about the end game necessarily, but about their planning process and inviting their clients to ask questions. And that was really valuable in completing aspects of the plan that they were unsure about. So something to think about. And then I had an issue personally with succession planning in my business. The Monahan and Roth, my beloved business partner, was 35 years my senior, and his partner was also involved in the business. Both of them in their mid to late 80s at the time, and we had a succession plan. Largely, it was built around our operating document. I was at this time the breadwinner and the primary service provider in our consulting company, and so it was pretty well laid out. However, I had an unanticipated medical issue that threw a rock in our plans, and we found ourselves looking at key man insurance. For me, a 30-year junior to my business partners, everything ended well. That was more than a decade and a half ago, but it was an eye-opener for me, and it has helped me to help other firms in thinking about succession planning, because it's not always you. It's not always the fact that you are looking to retire, or you are looking for a methodology for what happens next. It could be somebody in your organization who's critical to the operation, and you should be considering all of those parts and pieces as components of your plan. There would be two aspects I would suggest that you consider about all of the parties, the future parties and the current parties, and that would be what's our plan? What would be our desired course of action, and what is the timeline for that? And what if there's an emergency? What if our plan has to be implemented tomorrow? So things to consider. To do this, I think it's really important to perform what I call a gap analysis and understand the skills that are required to run your business, the skills and the systems that are required, and then find if you're out of the picture, how are those systems and how are those skills accommodated if a trusted partner or a mission critical employee is the one who's carved out of the picture. How are those skills and systems accommodated? And going through that methodically, person by person, is another way to engage in succession planning. So, any one or all of these pointers hopefully will give you ideas about where to start based on the composition of your plan. And then, drafting a plan. The actual plan should have certain components. I got I think the text boxes on your screen are from the NASA plan, or the NASA guidance for developing your plan. And basically, prioritizing the objectives. Is your objective to retire? Is your objective to close, sell, merge, have a successor in line? What are the priorities and objectives of that plan? Determining a reasonable time frame. There's got to be some time frame in mind. Important because, one, it helps to keep you on track to identifying any changes in that plan and to actually implementing the objectives of that plan. It also gives you a basis for testing your plan. And as important as it is for the regulators to come in and assess the efficacy of your plan, it's important for you to do that too. Testing a business continuity plan is actually kind of easy. You can simply call in the night before and on your voicemail leave a message that you're not coming to the office today, you can't be reached, and implement the business continuity plan for one day and see what happens. And you can prepare your employees for the fact that this may happen at some point in time. You can also give your employees or associates, if to the extent they exist, the same opportunity. Give them some time within the month of April. I would like you to please call in sick. You pick the day, somewhat unannounced. You pick the day, you pick the time, and we will assess our ability to cover for you when you're not here. A great way to test the plan. You record. If there's nothing wrong with mistakes that happen, there's nothing wrong with gaps. Gaps are important because you have to learn to close them or strive to close them. So anyway, a time frame is really important. Evaluating the legal and the regulatory impact, also important. Some states have specific requirements about the qualifications of individuals who take over your practice. I will admit I haven't evaluated what Montana's are, but I know that the requirements exist in other states, and they may impact the implementation of your plan to the extent you're also registered in those other states. So knowing those regulatory requirements in your core group of states, not just your home state, is really important to be testing the value of your plan and the efficacy of implementing that plan. And then finally, as I mentioned before, prioritize or finding a way to communicate the plan to your clients is really important, has way more value than you think. It's not a warning shot. It's a value add. It's a way of communicating the degree to which you value your relationship with those clients and you intend to protect it. So please consider communicating with your clients on an ongoing basis about the fact that you are engaging in, and you can call it business continuity if it's more comfortable for you, but including succession in that process. Trust me, it's really important to your clients. It's also important to your vendors. Uh, Making sure that your mission critical vendors, your custodian, your document archive, that those, uh, the contact persons at those vendors are prepared for your backup plan. They're prepared to take and accept calls from a successor and an individual authorized to take control of those keys in your absence. Notifying the vendors will ensure a much smoother transition if in fact the plan is implemented on an urgent basis, on an unannounced basis. That's really an important facet. So with that, I hope I've given you some concept of what's involved. I'm not going to make light of it and say that it's easy to do, but it's really important to do. And it's important to your business. And in addition to meeting your regulatory requirement, you have an opportunity through this planning to actually increase the value of your legacy. So, gosh, I hope we have some questions. Do we have any questions?
There aren't any in there at this time, so just a little reminder, if you do have a question, go ahead and click on that Q&A icon at the top and you can just type it in and I will read that for you.
Thanks, Laura. While we see if anybody has something to chime in, I was thinking of something when you were talking about right, identifying a successor. I talked with our examiners before this about, you know, any frequent things they see, things to share. And one of the things that was mentioned was a very common question, and it fit right in with your slide about, you know, 26% of, I think it was the Edward Jones survey of advisors were like, I don't know how to identify them. Like, I don't know how do I find this person? And that's definitely something that we've seen. And, you know, some of the ideas that we've offered to people over the years have been, you know, attending things like our investment advisor symposium where you can network with other advisors. You know, we also offer a capital formation event that's coming up this year in June 12th, I believe. There's definitely some information on our website. If I got that date wrong, please check it out. It's an opportunity for, we see investment professionals there. That's another place you can network. I'm sure that, I think one of our advisors or examiners mentioned that, you know, he's also just offered to provide the list of other state registered IAs that we have. We, you know, don't sell your list for any other purpose, but just like here's who's in the state, you know, if that's something that would be useful to you. I wonder if you have seen other ways that people are identifying successors, Lisa.
Yeah, so that's a really great suggestion, and knowing who is available in your state, and kind of going through that list and reconciling your business type and style to that individual or that firm is a really valuable way to proceed. There are competitive issues and concerns that sometimes arise from that, which are natural as well, and so. You know, just for now, licensing aside, identifying an individual who is a professional, even if they're at an arm's length, even if for a moment even if they're not licensed at the time, identifying the individual who will take control of that plan in your absence is important. You'll have to have a backup. You'll have to have somebody who's licensed to provide the services, but you can give somebody authority, even a trustee, as I mentioned, an accountant, or identify an individual who may have an interest, who may not be qualified to be you, but who can satisfy the regulatory licensing requirements, is something you can accomplish through that networking, and even through sometimes through client consortiums, you know, client advisory meetings, or you know, outreach to clients as well.
Great, thank you guys. A couple questions that are in there. This one I can answer real quick, but will this information, the slides, be available online? And yes, we will send out the recording of this and also the slide deck, and then place it on our website and send that link as well. And the second one is we're a small RIA, and I'm practicing business continuity today as my coworker, our managing member / president, is on vacation for a week. I have access to passwords, accounts, etc. In a longer term situation, I would not, however, have check writing authority.
Right.
Is there a common practice other than adding my name to accounts to plan for that need?
Well, that's a really good question. That's why I mentioned that. I mean, there are other aspects of your business you don't really think of, related to the lease, certainly related to banking, but having an introduction of yourself to your bank and that scenario they will dictate to you what they need to have as backup, and it varies state by state. Some banks have a trusted contact policy. Others will require a signature, but it can be invoked on that authority can be invoked when there is an absence or when there is an interruption. So the components of that would be to have that strategy in your plan that you're going to the bank, you're going to make sure that in the event of an anticipated or unanticipated succession, this individual shall be given check writing privileges, and then let the bank dictate. So that's in your plan. The bank will dictate then what is necessary to cover that. And sometimes, some of these controls are technical, some are physical, some are administrative. And if you can't overcome the procedure or the plan, then you can always physically, with a document or technically with a password, then having an internal administrative policy that says that I have check writing authority. However, I will not utilize this authority unless XYZ happens, and write it into your plan. That's also a way to overcome some of those obstacles.
Great, thank you. Another one came in. Are there resources to help us identify other potential investment advisors who may have similar strategies for succession purposes?
Well, you're certainly the network that Kirsten mentioned. I think that the Nassau website is a really good place to go. I can't remember offhand. I know when they proposed the business continuity rules, there was a comment period, and I can't remember if there were comments on that plan, but that would be a great place to start, is to look at those comment letters and find out what other firms are doing. I think it's a great question for your examiner when Montana shows up on your doorstep too, is to inquire about, they're going to assess your plan, and they're going to give you ideas about, where it's weak and where it's strong, and then responding to those weaknesses. So that may be a way to assess planning. There are also, firms that acquire other that acquire advisors, or that merge with advisors. Those, I don't think I should be naming names of those firms, but many of them, large independent broker dealers, for instance, have succession planning documents and information on their websites, and they reflect what their constituents, what their brokers and advisors have done to accomplish that. So those are really great template resources that I have leveraged very often when I'm dealing with an advisor and its succession. There's a relationship with either a custodian, or sometimes they're duly registered with the broker dealer. And I always start there with the custodian and with the broker dealer in case they have requirements that have to be accommodated because of either the dual registration or because of the custodian relationship. So I would say, ask your custodian, ask your, the account, the clearing firm. And if you are a dual registrant, ask your broker dealer.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add, and this is certainly a very time-intensive way of doing it. It certainly wouldn't be a shortcut, but of course, all AGVs are publicly available. And there are not that many. If you're looking for another state registered IA, there aren't that many of you in Montana. It certainly would be no small undertaking, but it's definitely a question for your examiner if they're aware of somebody else who uses a similar strategy when we're on site. And again, also those are available to the public.
Yeah, and speak to your compliance consultants. I get questions about, I had a question just this morning about that on that topic. So whomever you rely on for consultation in that respect, speak with them, because it's hard to say off the top of your head what the right plan would be until you really understand the circumstances. And so there's often a one-on-one that is involved in taking the next step.
Great, thank you guys. There's no other questions in the queue right now, so one last chance to get those typed in.
I feel like I'm in an auction and there's nobody bidding. Sold.
Yeah, sold. Looks like that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate your time, Lisa. If you had any closing thoughts, I certainly want to give you an opportunity to share those.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's really a great first step that you guys are here and that you're paying attention. And there's no right or wrong way to do this because your businesses are all unique. So pick one or two of those thoughts, those questions, those ideas off of the slides and just start there and let it evolve over time and make it a regular part of what you're considering. You can't finish it on day one. It's not a sit down and finish it today type of project. So set an every 6-month reminder or a quarterly reminder until you get that plan where you would say it's 75, 80% intact, and then begin to test those and build out the remainder of the plan. But that would be my advice: is get it on your calendar, start somewhere. There's no wrong place to start. Start somewhere and make it happen.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. We really appreciate everyone who's come today live, as well as those of you who are watching this after the fact. Appreciate your time and your attention. I do want to remind you, our office is also a resource. There's we have a title of examiner when we come to your office and we start looking for certain compliance stuff. But we're also a resource, and we have highly educated staff who are happy to help you. So give us a call. We'll work through what we can. We can't write it for you, but we certainly can help talk through some of this stuff with you. So we really appreciate that, and we like having a close relationship with this small number of people. So don't forget about us as well.
Excellent.
And it's seeing none. Are we still no additional questions, Laura?
Yep, that seems to be it.
Okay, well thanks everyone.
Kirsten, thank you so much. I didn't say thank you, but I meant it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to kind of share my thoughts, and I hope it was meaningful for the audience and helps to advance your regulatory initiatives as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
All right. Bye.